Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on Erasmus Plus opportunities for micro-credentials and qualifications agencies organized by the ETF, European Training Foundation. My name is Cristiana Burze, I work for the ETF, and I will chair the webinar today. Before we start, I would like to draw your attention on some technicalities on Zoom. As you can see in the slide, interpretation into French and Russian is available. You can activate the interpretation using the button in the bottom of the screen. Throughout the presentations, you are invited to use the chat box for any questions you may have, and we will do our best to address the questions at the end of each of the session. Please feel free to write down your questions either in English, French, or Russian, and we will take care of that. I propose we start now, and I'm giving the floor to my colleague, Mr. Yorgos Zizimos, the head of a policy advice and EU programming unit at the ETF. Yorgos, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cristiana. Good morning, and good morning to everybody. Let me start by saying thank you to the team, the ETF team, but also colleagues from Brussels for organizing this first session. It's the first because others will follow, because we have a clear request from the European Commission to work on this idea of supporting further the international dimension of Erasmus+. And this is what we plan to do next year. I will say in a minute what we have in mind, but let me start by thanking everybody involved. Erasmus Plus doesn't need a special introduction. It's been around for 35 years. This is a program that has been supporting opportunities for learning, exchanges, sustainability for many, many years now. And it's one of the most successful programs in the EU, if not the most successful. So with that in mind, let me say what we plan to do very, very quickly. I know you have a busy schedule today to discuss specifically on micro-credentials and qualifications, but I want to go a bit beyond that. So what we plan to do next year is to, first of all, to support the policy dialogue in the partner countries. And this means often that how the discussions of participation in Erasmus Plus finds its place in the policy making in the partner countries. We feel that there's a gap there. We feel that not always the lessons learned from Erasmus Plus participation are used into the policy makers, and that is a waste of excellence, experiences, and involvement in this program. We feel there's a lot to learn from that. The second thing we want to do, and part of it is what we're doing today, is to contribute and support the European Commission and colleagues in Brussels on the dissemination of calls and of opportunities. And we feel that there is space there to get the countries we work with to know more about these calls and to prepare for participation in this course. We feel that this is important, always within the logic of the internationalization of VET, but not only VET. The third element, which is perhaps the most important, is the support to policy advice. We want to be in a position, and through our great cooperation with colleagues in Brussels and the European Commission, we want to be in a position to support them with advice on how Erasmus Plus to be shaped in a way that can support countries beyond the EU and their needs. So there's an element of policy advice there, but also to the EU delegations and the Erasmus Plus agencies where they exist, but also other offices of Erasmus in partner countries. And we plan an event next year, probably here in Turin, to bring together, at least for one region, these offices and discuss how and what needs to be done. The last thing that we want to do, we do it in a way, but we want to continue, is to encourage the use of networks. Networking is very, very important for when you work with Erasmus Plus. You need to identify partners, the right partners, and we're trying to do that through our own networks in the house, where they bring together different stakeholders that they can collaborate and participate together in Erasmus+. And this means, of course, not only from outside the EU, but also partners within the EU. So we try to connect, let's say, partners from different countries. Either this is for a call of centers of vocational excellence, either this is for capacity building or other calls. So this is what we plan to do for 2023. I'm glad we start today with this discussion, and I would like to welcome everybody on board and looking forward for this interaction. Thank you, Christiana, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Yorgos. Before giving the floor to the first presenter, I would like to introduce the members of the ETF qualifications team who have been involved in the preparation of this webinar. We have Mr. Arjen Day, who is the ETF coordinator of the qualifications modernization project in ETF. Hello, Arjen, you are muted, but we see you.
Good morning.
Mr. Anatoly Garmash, Senior Human Capital Development Expert, who is in charge of a dossier on micro-credentials in the qualification modernization project.
Good morning.
And Ms. Alina Codrescu, the project officer in the qualifications project.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
I now wish to welcome Mr. Pavel Krempasky from the European Education and Culture Executive Agency, who will present us the funding opportunities on capacity building in VET, in vocational education and training, in 2023 under Erasmus+. During the presentation, I would like to encourage participants to write down the questions in the chat box. We will collect the questions and address them. We'll do our best to address them at the end of the presentation. Mr. Krempasky, thank you for your availability to be with us today, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christiana. Good morning to everybody. I'm happy to be with you. And at the same time, I would like to thank you to colleagues from European Training Foundation, because I work also for agency. The name of the agency is European Education and Culture Executive Agency. And why I would like to thank, because organizing this event is helping our agency and is helping the action of the Erasmus Plus program, capacity building in vocational education training, to be known in outside Europe, to make it simple. Therefore, it's a big thanks, because for us it's a help. At the same time, I would like to inform you about this action, and to tell you in brief, let's say in 20-30 minutes, what is the action about, and what kind of projects or in a bit what kind of projects you can be involved. So just I will share the screen that you see the slides. So I think now I hope, do you see? Sorry, just
yes,
a moment.
we can see it.
Yes, just a moment. I need to, and now it should be better.
Perfect, thank you, Pavel.
So, as I already said, in these 30 minutes, I will inform you about the action called capacity building in VET. Maybe some of you or many of you, you know already similar action that is called capacity building in higher education. So this is already well settled action, and the similar action, capacity building in VET, it's a new action. The first projects we received end of March of this year, and the next project, and maybe a project where you will be involved, we will receive until end of February next year. So before we go into details, I wish that you have a big picture of the action, and you know what is important. As I already said, for projects, it's important to know that they should be submitted until end of February. They can last maximum 1, 2, or 3 years. Organizations from outside European Union and outside countries associated to the program, there are 6 countries. You will see them on the slides. So to make it simple, your organization from your country can be partners in these projects. So this is important to know, because as a consequence, you need to have an organization that will submit the project, that will coordinate the project. So you can be only partners. I say only, but of course it's important, but to be also a partner, but only to know that you cannot prepare the project and submit it. And the last thing is our agency that I work for, I already said, it's a European Education and Culture Executive Agency. And we manage the different programs. One of them is Erasmus+. So it means, in other words, we manage the program. It means we organize selection of projects. And for selected projects, we give a grant. And this is the last piece of information before we go into details, that the minimum grant that we will give to selected project in CBVET, I will use this abbreviation, Capacity Building in VET, it's 100,000 euro, and the maximum is 400,000 euro. So I think with this big picture, you know where you are, how long the project will be, what could be your role, we can go more into details. On the first slide, you will see what is the project about, why the action exists. So all projects that will be submitted under the CBVET action should help to improve VET providers and VET institutions and VET systems in your country. Officially, I should use the term third countries not associated to the program, but I guess you are coming from these countries. So therefore, I'm saying that these actions, this project should help you to improve your VET providers and your VET system. And we can replace the word improve also with other words to be more concrete. So the project should improve relevance, accessibility, and responsiveness of your VET providers and VET systems. Objectives of the actions, they are three at the same time. When you will be involved in a project and when you will prepare your project with partners from the European Union or from third countries associated to the program, there are 6, you will see later on which. So don't forget that in your project, at least one of these objectives should be clearly visible. As already the title of the action says, one of the objectives is to improve the capacity of VET providers, and in other words, to strengthen the potential for cooperation between private and public stakeholders in order better to react on the demand, on the needs of, we can say it simple, of companies. Because companies know in general what is needed. So it's not only sufficient to prepare a project based on the ideas and the needs of the VET providers, VET schools and VET institutions, but the project need to reflect the needs, what is needed by the labor market, what is needed by companies. The second objective is to improve in general quality and responsiveness. So again, to improve the VET system, VET providers to be able to act and react on the needs of labor market. And last but not least, it is the last objective is in some way to adjust the VET provision to different development strategies, because VET system, it doesn't operate in some outside a bigger context. So therefore, VET projects and also CBVET projects, they should reflect the development strategies on different level, local, regional, or national. Once you select the objective of your project, you need to focus it on one of the themes that you see on the slides. And then I'm not going to go through each of these themes because in general they are quite self-explanatory. Important for you is to know when you are going to prepare with other organizations your project, you have to select at least one of these themes. You can select also more, but please, it doesn't mean that if you select more thematic areas, your project will have better chance to be selected. No, the number of thematic areas is not important. Important is how you will align your project with the selected thematic area. In one box, maybe you see there are 3 white dots. So it means it should show you that in addition to these themes that you see on the slide, you can select and add also another thematic area that you think is important for your project. But at the same time, you must show that this additional thematic area is in line with the objectives of the whole action capacity building in VET. So you must select one of the thematic areas that you see. And in addition, you can add also other. Now you know the objective, you know the thematic area of your project. What kind of activities are expected to be in your project? What can you do? For what activities you can get the EU grant? On the slide there is written, for example, so it means the list is not exhaustive. You can also do other activities if they are relevant for the whole action. No, please, no matter what kind of activities you will do or you will describe in your project, don't forget that all of them, they have one aim. They should improve principally VET system and VET providers in countries not associated to the program. So it means in your country. And what could be the activities? You can create or develop a network of different VET providers from different parts of the world. You can improve capacity of institutions by creating different tools or programs. What is important also to include activity that strengthen the capacity to cooperate with private sector, as we already said, with companies, to involve them when you are going to develop curricula, excuse me, or work-based learning. And it's important to be in contact with or with companies with world of work. Another activity can lead to developing or transferring of already existing training and teaching materials, including also ICT tools. And last but not least, it is expected, or you can involve in your project also mobility. And this mobility could be either physical or virtual. Only to kindly to remind you that we don't expect that projects will be based only on mobility. So the whole project will be based on sending of teachers or learners for some weeks to other country. This could be a part, this could be one activity of your project, but not the only one. And here you can see better what I meant by three groups of countries. In this project, in projects CBVET, countries from three groups can participate. The partner can come either from 27 EU member states or 6 countries. We use the terminology, it's a little bit long, so sorry for that. Third countries associated to the program, North Macedonia, Iceland, Norway, Serbia, Liechtenstein, Turkey, or 102 countries, and among these countries, it's also your country. They belong to the group third countries not associated to the program, and they can come from 6 regions. Later on the next slide, I will show you which regions I mean. As I already said, the aim of the action is simply to finance selected projects. In total, we have 27 million, or a little bit more than 27 million of euro to finance selected projects. Let's have a look how this 27 million euro could be distributed. As I already said, there are 6 regions that can participate in the action CBVET. And if I'm not mistaken, your country should come from neighborhood East, South Mediterranean countries, Western Balkan. So you can see how much money we can give to selected projects from this region. As you can see, the lowest EU grant we will give to Caribbean, around 300,000 euro. And the highest share has Sub-Saharan Africa, more than 8 million euro. On the other hand, we need to take into account how many countries are covered by the region. For example, in Sub-Saharan Africa, you have something like 30 countries. And in Western Balkans, you have, I think, 5 or 6. So, but this can give you an idea about the chances for your project. So now we know the objective, thematic area, activities, and there is a need to take into account regional priorities. When you will prepare your project, you will have a better chance if you align your project with regional priorities defined for each region. So I think you are coming from these three regions. So in your case, it's important that you will show how your project reflects economic and investment plan and or Torino process. As this event is organized by European Training Foundation, I think you are even maybe better. You have better knowledge of the Torino process than me, because you are in constant contact with European Training Foundation. So everything about the Torino process could be found on also on the website of the ETF, but also in the program guide. Program guide is the main document that you will use when preparing the project. I think on my slide you will see later on there is a hyperlink. For Western Balkan, I would like to mention also that except economic and investment plan and Torino process, we will also give a priority to projects that include mobility of either learners or staff. It means teachers, trainers, managers, directors of vet institutions. For Neighborhood East region and South Mediterranean countries, the regional priority is the same. Please align your project with economic and investment plan and or Torino process. Regional priorities, they apply also for other regions. In Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, they have important document that is called Multi-Annual Indicative Program. So the projects involving partners from these regions, they need to show how the project reflects multi-annual indicative program. In case of Sub-Saharan Africa, we also support involvement of least developed countries, migration and migration countries. Maybe you ask what we mean by these terms, because we can have different perception. So in the main document that I already mentioned, program guide, you will find a link, and under the link, there is a list of countries that we consider, or OECD, least developed countries and migration countries. For Latin America and Caribbean, except of this multi-annual indicative program, we also support cooperation among more than one country. So it means priority will have the projects that involve not only one country from Latin America, but more than one country. And except these thematic areas and regional priorities, there are also horizontal aspects. But please, maybe don't be confused. There are so many, I can say, things that you need to take into account. But these horizontal aspects, they are relevant and valid for the whole Erasmus Plus program. So under the Erasmus Plus program, you can find different action. One of them is CBVET that we are talking about today. And for all actions, we encourage the organizations to take into account one of these horizontal aspects: inclusion and diversity. In other words, we mean if you focus your project on vocational education and training on people that are in different way, simply they are coming, for example, from rural areas, or they are disabled. Simply they need to be included in the vocational education and training. Environmental sustainability here, as you can imagine, for example, climate change could be one of the topic you can consider in your project. Digital dimension, in other words, how you will include ICT tools in vocational education and training. And last horizontal aspect is linked to the common values, civic engagement, participation, common values of the European Union, but we hope it's common values of also other parts of the world, like democracy, diversity, inclusion. Finally, before we go to technical details of the project, what kind of impact is expected at the end? I don't go into details. This you can find in the program guide. But when you will think about your project, when you will prepare it, then think that at the end, imagine after 2 years, because as I said, the project can last 1, 2, or 3 years. At the end, what we can ask, what will change? What will change in your organization? What kind of changes could be expected in vet system on a regional level or local level or national level? And here on the slide, you see some examples. and some tip, and then we go to some technicalities. So I can imagine that maybe some of you have experience with Erasmus Plus program, maybe even with the CBVET action. But I can imagine many of you, it's the first time that you hear about this action because it's quite new action. So one of the first steps is to read the document that I already mentioned, program guide. Program guide, it's quite long document. It has something like 400 pages, but don't worry, don't worry. For you are important maybe 10 pages that are describing the action about we speak today, capacity building in VET. So this is the first point. This you can do also today, maybe on Monday, and you can take a decision. Yes, this looks interesting. We can go on. So, but this is the first step, that you have an idea about the action, about the projects. The next step that we kindly advise you. It was yesterday on, yes, we organized, no, sorry, it was on Wednesday, excuse me. On 7th of December, we organized info session, 4 hours info session. So we kindly invite you to watch the video and to see the slides, because we went more into details. Third important step is linked to finding a coordinator. I already mentioned that organizations coming from your countries can be only a partners. So it means someone must lead the project and submit the project. The organization is called coordinator. Under the title, how to find applicant coordinator, it's a hyperlink. Once you click, there are some advices how to find a coordinator. The next point is, I already mentioned that the first CBVET projects, they were submitted until end of March this year. In September, we selected the first wave of projects. And maybe you are asking, can we see these selected projects? Yes, if you go to so-called funding and tender opportunity portal, no matter if you don't remember the title, there is a FTOP portal, it's a hyperlink. Once you click, you will simply try to find capacity building in VET with the year 2022. And then in the section list of selected projects, you will find the selected projects. I will show you on the next slide. I can imagine there is a lot of information. So maybe the most important is if you don't know something or if you forget something, you can use the email and we will try to answer your questions. And now we go a little bit to criteria that will be used when evaluating the project you will be a partner. But before that, I will check. Christiana, please, could you remind me how much time do I have?
Pavel, you still have 12 minutes.
12 minutes. Thank you very much. I will manage. When you are preparing the project with your partners, please remember that it should be not longer than 70 pages. This is most important. You don't need to know other details. It should have 70 pages. If someone writes more than 70 pages, automatically the system will delete the other pages. This is done in order that all projects have the same, I can say, they are in the same situation. And now, what could be your position in a project? I already spoke about the coordinator. This is the organization that will really put together the project together with partners and submit it via the funding and tender opportunity portal. Except the coordinator, and this is one of the position you can have. It's a full partner. Full partners, they are members of the partnership, and they do some parts of the project. In each project, you must have coordinator and full partner. In addition, there are 2 other positions you can have in the project: affiliated entity or associated partner. Affiliated entity, I can imagine maybe it's a little bit new word. It's an organization that has some link, either capital link, financial link, or legal link to the full partner or coordinator. One example is, so for example, a daughter company. A company will be a full partner, and a daughter company could be an affiliated entity. And the last position you can have is associated partners. Associated partners, they don't play a crucial role in the project. In general, they help with promotion. It means, in other words, with making the project more visible and with the sustainability. Only to inform you that when we will speak about the minimum number of organizations that should be involved in the project, affiliated entities and associated partners are not counted in this minimum number. Only the coordinators and full partners are counted. Now, who can be the coordinator? This I already mentioned. The coordinator must be active in the VET field, and it must be established in the EU member states or third country associated to the program. On the previous slide, you already saw that there are 6 countries that are countries associated to the program. So organizations from your country, if you are coming outside EU and outside these countries associated program, cannot be a coordinator. In general, who can participate? Because we are receiving questions, can this type of organization be involved in the project? So the general answer is that each organization that will participate in the project must be active in the field of vocational education and training or the labor market. So if you are active in the VET field or labor market, you can be involved in CB-VET project. But still, I can imagine you can say that it's still a little bit too general. Therefore, we tried in the program guide to define some types of organizations that could be involved, but I'm saying some. In other words, the list that you can see on the slide, it's not exhaustive. There could be also other type of organizations involved. But what we expect, logically, there will be some VET providers, VET schools, also universities. We expect that universities that providing VET, but maybe also other universities, companies, employment services, etc. What is important for this year, it's a novelty. We expect that at least one of the organizations will be VET provider at non-tertiary level. So it means some, for example, VET school at the secondary level or VET Institute of Further Education. This I already mentioned. On the left-hand side, you see the group of countries from where the applicant coordinator can come. And on the right-hand side, you see from which countries full partner, affiliated entity, and associated partner can come. So in other words, also your countries. Don't be confused. This slide you can see later on in a calm way. Only to tell you that the minimum number of partners that must be involved in the project is 4, and the minimum number of countries that should be involved is 3. The different scenarios, alternatives, you can see on the slide. Only to conclude that number of organizations coming from EU member states and third countries of associated to the program cannot be higher than number of organizations coming from third countries not associated to the program. And here is the summary of technical information. I already said the length of the project. We spoke about this. About the grant, we spoke also minimum 100,000, maximum 400,000. Please don't forget that 20% of the budget of the project needs to be covered by your resources. The grant can cover maximum 80%. And we spoke about the deadline 20th of February next year. Now, maybe in the last 5-6 minutes, I will tell you something about the selected projects and about the criteria that will be used when evaluating your project. So as I already said, until end of March, we received the first CB-VET projects. In total, there are 121, and we selected 58. So quite a high number of projects. Please don't forget that before we go to qualitative evaluation of your project, we firstly do the so-called technical check. We do the eligibility check. And with the green, in the green, you see the problems that we had. In some projects, simply there were no enough number of partners or not enough number of countries involved. And therefore, we couldn't do the qualitative evaluation. Or for projects, they didn't use the official application form. There is an official application form, and you have to use this one. And some tip, I think just a moment here. I would say this I already mentioned. We can skip this because this I already mentioned. And now only to give a flavor of what kind of criteria we will use for evaluation, qualitative evaluation. Each project will be evaluated against 4 award criteria: relevance, quality of the implementation, quality of the partnership, and impact. You see the maximum points for each award criteria. In total, you can get 100 points. In order to have some chances to be selected, you must have at least 60 points, and you must reach at least the minimum pass points. So it means 15 for the relevance. If you receive, for example, for relevance, 14 points, then you will be excluded. No matter what will be the total points, you can have also even maybe 70 points. But if you receive, if you don't receive the minimum pass points, in case of relevance is 15, you are out. And here we go very quickly through the 4 criteria. In the middle of the slide, you see it's a copy paste from the program guide. Each award criteria, in this case relevance, has some bullet points. These are the criteria that you need to answer in the application, because the external evaluators, each project will be evaluated by 2 external evaluators. They will follow each bullet point and they will try to see if you answered each bullet point in your application. So this is the relevance. I think the next is quality of the implementation. So it's a quality of your project, how coherent is, what kind of methodology you use in order to react on the needs. Non-formal learning methods, it's not a must. If they are in the project, they will be evaluated, but if they are not, they will be not evaluated. Selection of participants, experts will follow in what way you will select the participants that will be involved in your project, if you respect diversity and inclusion. Recognition, here we expect that you will use the EU recognition tools. Quality, it's a quality control. Cost effectiveness, if it is your project not too expensive. And mobility, it's not a must. If you are going to have mobility, the experts will evaluate in what way you are going to select the participants. And very shortly to this relevance, here I would like to highlight what is important is the regional priorities. As I already mentioned, you have a better chances if you align your project with regional priorities. Concerning innovation, we expect that you will use innovative methods and your results will be innovative. Complementarity means that your project will be aligned with already existing initiatives you already implemented. And I think this is most important. For the partnership configuration, please, we expect that you will combine in your partnership different type of organizations. You will distribute the task in a way that it will be clear that all partners are committed. And collaboration, it means the quality of collaboration, not only among the project partners, but also outside the partnership. And impact, of course, the evaluators will evaluate the impact of your project also after the end of the project, and not only organizations involved in the project, but also outside the project. Dissemination, it means it's a little bit not so common word. It's a promotion of your project, how you are going to promote the project. Exploitation, in other words, it means how you will assure that the results of your project will be used also by other organizations. Open access, it means that your project results should be open for free to other organizations. And sustainability, I think it's clear how you will assure that the results will be used also after the end of the project. And I think I have the two last slides. Some tips here on the slide. You can, this is the way how you will find the selected projects. If you are not able to find it, you will send us an email. And in the last tip, already what is important is that already today, if you are interested in the action, please read the program guide. If you think it's important and useful for you, please start to prepare your project with your partners already today. And don't forget that in January, you can see all 58 projects on internet, on the FTOP portal, the short description about each project. And I think this slide, I'm not going to comment. Why? Because this slide is relevant not only for CBVET action, it's relevant for all actions in the Erasmus Plus program. And I think it is quite self-explanatory. So I think I wish you good luck with your project. And as said, we are open to your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pavel, for such a clear and informative presentation. I wish to inform all the participants that after this event, we will share the presentation by email. So you will have it. We have collected a number of questions from the participants in the chat that I'm now addressing when Pavel, in case you wish to provide an answer. We have a question from Mr. Mohammed Zlassi, who is asking if a project on literacy and adult education can be eligible under this call.
In general, please always take into account that your project should improve the capacity of VET providers and VET systems. So you mentioned literacy. In general, it's not so clearly linked to the VET field. So in this case, it's better that you read the program guide and you try to better align your original idea in order to show clearly that your project is linked to the VET field. You mentioned also in your question two aspects, literacy. About this, I already answered that. Please, if it is linked to VET field, then it's relevant. And then you mentioned adult education. In this case, yes, VET projects, they are open to all target groups, but it must be linked to the VET. So the projects are not only oriented on young learners, but also on adult learners. But important is it must be the main idea should be to improve the capacity of VET providers and VET systems. From what you said, it was quite short, but it doesn't look so much aligned with VET action.
Thank you, Pavel, for the answer. We also have a question from the Academic Information Center in Latvia on the issue of coordination. You have addressed very thoroughly in your presentation coordination issues, but just for the sake of more clarity from the perspective of the institution, who can be the coordinator? What type of institutions in your country, for example, a European Qualifications Framework National Contact Point, a member of the ENG, a qualifications agency, can they coordinate?
Yes. Here I would like to say what is written in the program guide, because sometimes we need to be clear. And it's written that coordinator must be active in the field of vocational education and training. We didn't specify more in details who should it be, but this is the answer. Your organization must be active in the VET field.
Thank you, Pavel. One more question from the Academic Information Center in Latvia regarding partnerships. The question is, do partners from third, not associate countries can be full partners, or they can only work as subcontractors?
Yes, organizations from third countries not associated to the program, so coming from these six regions, they can have a position, they can have 3 positions in the project. They can be full partner, affiliated entity, or associated partner. These are the 3 positions. They can not have the last position. They can be not the coordinator, or in other words, also applicant coordinator. And concerning subcontractor, yes, of course, they can be subcontractor, but the thing is that this is not the subcontractors. They are not yet defined in the project, because if you organize a subcontract, then usually you don't know who will deliver the subcontract. So to make it short, it doesn't, please, subcontractor is not important. Important is that third countries from us not associated to the program can be full partner, affiliated entity, or associated partner. Please concentrate on these three positions.
Thanks a lot, Pavel, for these clarifications. They are really, really useful. I don't see other questions in the chat box, but I would warmly encourage all the participants to send us in writing by email any further question you may have after the webinar, and we will do our best to reply.
Cristiana, I see something, or we don't have time anymore, yes?
Yes, we do. We actually
fine.
have a few more minutes, so you can take.
Okay, fine. So very quickly. Okay. Thank you, Mustafa. Turkish institutions can also be coordinators, I presume. No. Excuse me. I made a mistake. Excuse me. Yes. Excuse me. Yes. Organization from Turkey can be coordinators. Excuse me, because I'm a little bit ill. So excuse me. Yes. Organizations from Turkey can be coordinators. The next question. Please, could you explain about equipment within the project? What kind of equipment are eligible and recommended within the CBV project? Equipment is possible. You can ask for EU grant for equipment. You need to justify what kind of equipment you need, and you need to justify that is needed for this project. We don't have any more detailed information. There is no list of equipment that you can have, but please, you need to justify that you really need it and why you need this specific equipment. If you need vet partners from Turkey, please contact us. Okay. Thank you. We encourage participants to consider relevant participants from Tunisia. Yes, Tunisia can be involved in the project. If you need, yes, this is nothing. Thank you, Mark. And I think that's it. Just a minute. Next question about partnership. Does partners from CERT countries not associated can be full partners? Yes, they can. Yes, they can be full partners. I have experienced in previous project that partners from CERT countries can only work and subcontracting. No, organizations from CERT countries not associated can be full partners, because the whole aim is to help them or to cooperate with them and to share experience with them. Thanks for this. Yes, and I think I have a question about coordinator. Who can be coordinator? This we already answered. It's an organization that is active in the vet field. Bonjour. And I think we answered all questions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I think we have answered. And again, I'm encouraging everyone to post additional questions to us, and we will discuss with Pavel and provide a reply to the participants. If there are no further questions at the moment, which I don't see, but otherwise we can take them afterwards, we can already move to next session on the key issues for cooperation for the recognition and development of micro-credentials. Like for the previous session, during the presentation, you are encouraged to write down questions in the chat, and we will collect them and we will try to address them by the end of the presentation. Otherwise, in case of time constraints, we will reply you afterwards. Now, I'm pleased to give the floor to Mr. Andrea Camilleri from the Knowledge Innovation Center, who is working with ETF on micro-credentials. Andrea, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me a quick confirmation that you can see it.
Yes, we do.
Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is essentially, let's say, the role of micro-credentials as it is at the moment, and sharing with you some ideas about how you can integrate micro-credentials into this call. Let's start a little bit from some policy context. So why are micro-credentials becoming so important at the moment? And the reason micro-credentials are let's say, on everyone's lips is because of a confluence of different trends coming together. The first of this is just what we might call the globalization of education and the globalization of student cohorts. This is in terms of both physical mobility of students across borders, but also virtual mobility, where in today's world, more and more you can go online and study from pretty much anywhere you feel like. Second trend we're looking at is digitalization of education, and this digitization is allowing us to, let's say, develop courses quicker, collaborate on courses quicker. It's allowing us to attend courses quicker. It's allowing us to, let's say, do different types of intelligence activities around courses. So digitization is, again, a big driver of innovation in education. From a student perspective, more and more, there is demand for personalization of learning pathways. So the days of the 1930s, where you could have a car in any color as long as it's black, are long gone. And because of that, also our education systems need to flexibilize to allow for all the new careers that are being created. And that then also links to increased demand for specialist micro-credential providers. So while, let's say, larger vocational institutions might have had, to some extent, a monopoly on providing education, more and more we are seeing specialist providers enter the field that teach specific high and in-demand skills. So to respond to all of this, the Commission has actually been extremely active and has been publishing a number of important policy documents over the last 2 years. I'm not going to walk you through every one of these because I would need most of the afternoon, but it's important to say that the European Council released a recommendation on a European approach for micro-credentials last June. And at the same time, there has also been a Council recommendation on micro-credentials and individual learning accounts, which also, let's say, go into this idea of micro-credentials for lifelong learning. So what is a micro-credential? And here the Council recommendation provides us with a definition of micro-credentials. The most common question I get when speaking about micro-credentials is how big is a micro-credential? And the Council gives a answer to this, and a micro-credential is simply a small volume of learning. How small, it doesn't get into, and that's very, very intentional, because the idea is not to say that, look, if you're one size, you're a micro-credential, and if you're another size, you're not. So a micro-credential really can be anything from a few hours to something that could be equivalent to 15, 20 ECTS, and everything is in between. When you look at the market, generally, you would find that there seems to be a sweet spot around 3 to 5 ECTS, but this isn't anything, let's say, that we oblige and put a strong definition on. The second thing that's important to note about micro-credentials is that the recommendation says very, very clearly that a micro-credential needs to be assessed. It needs to be assessed, it needs to provide specific learning outcomes, which means that, let's say, online courses without assessment are explicitly out of the scope of this recommendation. So for the purposes of EU policymaking, these are not considered to be micro-credentials. A couple of other things you should note is that the fact that the learning outcomes should respond to, let's just call them social challenges, is a very, very important part of the recommendation. The idea of stackability, which I will talk about in a couple of slides, is also important. And the idea that micro-credentials are not only the courses, but are also the certificates given to students at the end of their studies. And that attention needs to be given to ensure that those certificates are transparent, are portable, etc., etc. So these are kind of the ideas that are encompassed by that recommendation. So if you think of micro-credentials and you look at this and you look at this CBHE vet call, what can you do? What types of projects might be funded here. Now, it's important to say that these are just a bunch of ideas to, let's say, trigger projects from your side. In no way, shape, or form are we saying if you apply for this, you will get the money. Rather, these are meant to, let's say, start inspiring your discussions. So first and foremost, so we've divided these into 2 slides. The first is for policy level actions, and policy level actions are more for ministries of education, quality assurance agencies, and other, let's say, public bodies and competent authorities. And let's say if that kind of describes you, then the types of things you could do for micro-credentials are the following. First and foremost, developing quality assurance standards for micro-credentials. So there's a lot of QA that, let's say, looks at larger qualifications, but when you start, let's say, breaking it down into large numbers of smaller qualifications, how do you deal with that, let's say, increase in volume and reach the right level of quality assurance for these? Links to that, interesting projects could also be around creating databases of trusted providers or databases of accredited issuers for micro-credentials. And this is really talking about, let's say, projects that might try to create a model of institutional evaluation for micro-credential providers. Another one, which is specifically indicated in the Council recommendation, is the idea of mapping micro-credentials to national qualification frameworks and creating a space in national qualification frameworks for these types of, for these smaller volumes of learning. Taking it more than, let's say, at a strategy level, another type of project you might consider is creating sustainable funding schemes for lifelong learning through micro-credentials and individual learning accounts. And the basic idea here is that maybe saying, look, education is free up to the time you're 23 or 24, but then after that, you're on your own, may not necessarily be the best model. And if you're thinking of true lifelong learning, you might want to think about schemes that allow people to study continuously throughout their life and link that to some kind of public funding scheme. More ideas include developing national or regional platforms for micro-credentials. And when we're talking about national or regional platforms here, we're really talking about online portals for micro-credentials where people can discover and take micro-credentials, as well as strategies on how micro-credentials fit into, let's say, your more overall educational strategy. Because this is a vet call, involvement from the labor market is very, very important. So whenever you look at any of these things, incentivizing micro-credentials in the labor market is also an area of interesting attention. There are 2 things you might want to look at here. First is just increasing awareness of micro-credentials amongst employers so that employers would accept micro-credentials, but especially for larger employers, it's also incentivizing employers to create their own micro-credentials and to create bespoke trainings, which can help people actually take jobs with those employers. Within existing vocational institutions, policies that encourage the unbundling of existing education and training programs are particularly interesting. And by unbundling, what we essentially mean is take your existing program and break it into micro-credentials and allow people who might not be your typical students to take part of your program, especially for continuing education purposes. And finally, the development of national policies and strategies for micro-credentialing. So these are all ideas of, let's say, projects you might be, you could launch at the policy level. If we look at an institutional level, the scale is a little bit different, although the themes you will see are quite similar. So first and foremost, creation and development of institutional micro-credential strategies, capacity building of institutions to be able to launch micro-credentials, these types of projects. Secondly, and this is where, let's say, where a lot of the exciting stuff happens, is creating interinstitutional credit sharing agreements. So the idea here is if I do can I adapt a program at a vet institution to allow students to do virtual mobilities via micro-credentialing to integrate into the programs? And can I sign agreements with other types of vocational institutions to allow these sharing to happen easily and without too many barriers? Furthermore, the idea of co-creation of micro-credentials with the labor market. So can you create programs where the micro-credentials are partially developed or even entirely developed by employers? And there's a couple of different models here. You might want to look into creating professional certificates or competency certificates. You might also, let's say, look, we're more interested in recognition and validation of prior learning. Lastly, the idea here, I was speaking about the size of micro-credentials before. So one of the ideas behind micro-credentials is the idea of stacking. So can you create, let's say, new units of smaller qualifications that are built out of micro-credentials? So for example, can you combine 3 micro-credentials to create a micro-masters or a micro-degree or a block de competence? So the idea is that, let's say, once you've unbundled everything, you then might want to combine them again, but combine them again in new and innovative ways that are flexible and responsive to the demands of the labor market. I won't spend much time on this slide because the previous speaker has already talked about this. So a couple of words on instruments and measurables. So instruments are the ones you would always expect from this type of call: policy frameworks, research studies, capacity building events, websites, e-learning platforms, etc., etc. In terms of measurables, when you're looking at micro-credentials, I'd advise you to keep a couple of things in mind. The micro-credential strategy is all about increasing access to VET further and in making VET more flexible. So if you are looking at what type of indicators you want to put in, you need to think about, have I actually increased the flexibility and responsiveness of my education system? Have I actually increased access to this education system for people? And if your indicators, let's say, are going in that area, you're already very definitely going in the right direction. The other thing to consider is that remember that the definition of micro-credentials talks about certificating students. So it's a micro-credential only when that certificate is delivered to students, which means if you look at the definition strictly, you should ideally have a project where some students actually receive some micro-credentials. It's not just enough to talk about it. A few tips to consider when writing your applications. Now, first and most important tip, take the Council recommendation of 16th June 2022 on European approach for micro-credentials for lifelong learning and employability. Print it out, put it on your wall, and make it your best friend, because that is really your guidance to what is wanted here and where to go. A few summaries of some of the important points that are mentioned in this recommendation and which you should integrate into your projects as far as possible. First and foremost, relevance. So does your project application include a gap analysis? Are you just doing micro-credentials for micro-credentials' sake, or are you using them to address a lack of flexibility or competence areas that are rapidly evolving which haven't been addressed, or other demands from society and employment? So are your micro-credentials targeted? That's a very, very important criterion. Secondly, learner centricity. So in this area, what we're talking about is learner agency. Is the micro-credentials program you are creating increasing learner agency amongst your learners? Third one that we look at is learning pathways. Are you just randomly creating some micro-credentials and just kind of putting them on the market and hoping somebody will take them? Or are you actually designing a framework of micro-credentials, and within a framework enabling learning pathways that different types of students can follow depending on their prior knowledge and depending on their different learning strategies? So learning pathways and, let's say, clear and well thought out learning pathways are clearly preferred. Furthermore, we need to look at the quality assurance of micro-credentials, and quality assurance of micro-credentials is a factor of two things. It's first of all ensuring high quality micro-credentials, but it's also assuring efficient quality assurance systems that don't take away the flexibility that is the point of micro-credentials as a whole. So always try and keep, let's say, these two sometimes conflicting demands together. When we talk about transparency, transparency really means here qualification frameworks. So simply enough, are you mapping wherever possible, map your micro-credentials to a qualification framework. If the qualifications framework doesn't support it, try and still use the instruments of the qualification framework, such as learning outcomes, such as the data parts in the annex, to try and make your micro-credential as transparent as possible. And in terms of assessment, consider your assessment strategy, and also particular importance to how does your assessment strategy match your strategy for recognition of prior learning. So you want to have an assessment strategy that can support this as well. If we look at recognition, recognition is a particularly important one. So does your project support instruments that will improve the recognition of the micro-credentials by other academic institutions and by employers? Micro-credentials are still a relatively new instrument, and if they're not recognized, all of this is for nothing. Ways to do that: automatic recognition agreements, informing employers about these new types of instruments and how they can take advantage of them, open databases of trusted micro-credential providers, etc., etc. Closely linked to this is portability of those micro-credentials. And when we're talking about portability, here we're really talking about the technology used to actually deliver the micro-credentials to the students, and for the students to share those with employers. The recommendation makes clear a preference for digital credentialing, and ideally digital credentialing that is secured. And for that, let's say the instruments that come out of the Europass platform and associated initiatives such as digital credentials for learning are very interesting to explore. I think I've already covered this. So the authenticity is linked to the portability, and that basically means it's not enough to have a digital certificate. You need a digital certificate that's signed. So that's a very, very fast rush through the micro-credentials and how micro-credentials could be interesting for projects. I would be more than happy to answer any questions. If there are none, I would then pass to my colleague Martina to explain the Miro exercise.
Fantastic. I see Alina has already put in the link towards Miro board. I can share my screen to show you how that link would basically open up onto your website. So what to do, you just need to zoom in to be able to go onto the board that has a purple frame, where basically we have included the themes that were discussed in Anthony's presentation. I will go through them in order that you can assign yourselves, if you already have a thematic topic in mind that reflects any one of the themes that we mentioned in the presentation, that you can indicate this. But before I explain how to fill in the yellow sticky notes, I'll explain the themes. So we have all the themes that were mentioned in the PowerPoint in regards to policy level activities. So taking, for example, theme 1 to develop micro-credential standards for quality assurance or to include them into qualifications framework, all the way to the themes that were discussed on individual learning accounts for lifelong learning through micro-credentials. On the second one, I will zoom out and scroll over to the right. You will have the themes that were mentioned for institutional level activities, where you have all the themes mentioned from developing institutional micro-credential strategies all the way down to capacity building of institutions on micro-credentials. You may be wanting to work on multiple themes. You maybe want to work on themes that are not mentioned in either of these sticky notes. The opportunity to mention that would be in these boxes, where you can take one example here. I will just say, okay, my name is Martina. I am with KIC. I will include my email here, and I would like to work, for example, on theme 2, I could also choose to want to work on theme 8 as well, or any of the others, theme 8, and maybe another theme that has not been mentioned in either of these sticky notes, and I can also go further into detail there. The idea would be to matchmake between potential partners. So in case that you would be interested in doing, I would encourage you to make use of these different sticky notes to include your details and team-based. I will stop sharing my screen in order that I can take any questions. But yes, the Miro board, the link towards the Miro board will be sent to you also after this event, in case that you also wish to fill it in at a later stage.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Anthony. Thanks for your interesting presentation on the micro-credentials and on the tips. Thank you, Martina, for also explaining how the Miro board works. You have seen that my colleague Alina has shared the link to the Miro board in the chat. This is just for you to have an idea of how it looks like, how it works. But I would like to remind you that the link will remain available after the event, and we will share this link with you by email so that you will have the opportunity to write down your ideas and proposals, and you don't need to do it right now. This is just to clarify that how to work on this link. I don't see specific questions in the chat right now. What I wanted to mention, as my colleague Arjen has mentioned, is that all the elements that Anthony has referred to in his presentation are part of the guidelines for recognizing and developing micro-credentials, which are currently under preparation. So the work is ongoing in this regard. At this point, since let me see if there are further questions. I don't see now questions in relation to this presentation, but please feel free to send us questions regarding micro-credential afterwards, and we will be happy to reply to you afterwards. Therefore, I suggest that we move ahead with next sessions, which is focusing on qualifications agencies, where we will address key issues for cooperation and networking among qualifications and agencies, as this is emerging from the survey that ETF is currently conducting with the support of 3S. I'm pleased to pass the floor to Monica Hautzinger from 3S. Please, Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christiania. We'll now turn to the topic of national qualifications agencies. I'll just quickly share my screen with you. And I hope that you see my presentation now.
Yes, Monica, we do. Very
okay,
clear.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The study or the project that we're going to present to you today, this is a study on international mapping of national qualifications agencies that has been commissioned by the European Training Foundation, and I'm working on this together with my colleague Julia Fellinger, who's in the meeting today as well. So we've been invited today to present to you the first key findings, first insights from our survey and research on national qualifications agencies. And the key objective of this study is to develop a mapping of national qualifications agencies at an international level. So the study is still ongoing at this time and until March next year. So the key purpose of my presentation today is to provide you with a first glimpse on what we found out so far. And here we are. So the study is mostly based on desk research together with an online survey, and I'll tell a little bit more about that later, and qualitative interviews with representatives of qualifications agencies. The last part, the qualitative interviews, they are still ongoing, so they have not been included in this first findings yet. And yeah, as I said, the study has an international focus. So the mapping will include national qualifications agencies from various parts of the globe. And yeah, the research will be carried out until early next year, and I'll tell you a little bit later on when you can expect to receive and read results. But maybe first of all, why this research on national qualifications agencies? We have observed, and especially also the European Training Foundation has observed, that a growing number of countries are establishing qualifications agencies in an attempt to speed up, to deepen, to strengthen the implementation of qualifications reforms and to the further development of their qualification systems. And some of these agencies have expressed an interest in cooperating with peers from other countries to exchange experience, to learn from others, and to receive insights and inspirations for their further development at national level. And the aim of this overall mapping, of this study, is just to improve our understanding of the roles performed, the functions performed by existing qualifications agencies and their developmental needs. So we are interested in knowing how they are structured, how they are embedded in national qualification systems, what are their roles within national qualification systems, what are the services they provide, but also how they are funded, whether they are publicly or privately funded, and to what extent they already cooperate with other bodies, other agencies, both at national and international level. So these and many more questions are those that we cover in the survey, in this study. And in the end, this shall help us explore and gain insights on the potential of a worldwide network of qualifications agencies for an exchange of experience and for peer learning from each other. And this is also where the links to the Erasmus Plus call on capacity building for WET comes in. As Pavel presented before, the topics and the possibilities that you have within this call, the call might also be used as a vehicle to set up and organize such exchange of experience between national qualifications agencies or similar bodies. I've talked a lot now about national qualifications agencies, but I haven't really told you what they are and what we mean and understand by national qualifications agencies. First of all, it's important to mention that there is no such thing as a set definition of what a national qualification is or does, which roles it assumes and how it is set up. So that's why for the framework of this study, one task was also to come up with a working definition for our study, and then to see whether it works and whether existing agencies and qualifications agencies can actually find themselves in this definition, and whether a given country has a national qualifications agency in place or not, because this is also something, it's obvious not all countries in the way their qualifications systems are structured have such a body, such a qualifications agency in place. So our working definition looks as follows. We understand by a national qualifications agency a standalone body. So this is meant outside a ministry with a certain degree of autonomy that is dedicated to assuming a key role in supporting, in coordinating, in managing, and in administering and reforming qualification systems. So in short terms, it's a understood as a standalone body that assumes a key role in administering, in further developing qualification systems. And there's a second element to our working definition. We understand also that such a qualifications agency has a key role in coordinating the stakeholders of a qualification systems at national level. They are often linked to qualifications frameworks, to national qualifications frameworks, and may be linked to either the entire qualification system in a countries or sectors thereof. So there could be that in any given country, there's a qualifications agency that is solely responsible for developing the vocational education and training qualification systems or the higher education system. And there might be cases and countries where a qualification agency is in charge of the entire qualification system, covering all subsectors of education and training. So the survey that we did and that is still ongoing tries to survey national qualifications agencies and ask them a little bit in more detail on how they set up, to what extent they correspond to this definition that I've just told you of national qualifications agencies. And for this further research that we've done through this survey that is still ongoing, we focus on those countries where we believe, based on desk research, that have a national qualifications agency in place, or at least something that is comparable to it in terms of a body and an agency. And this leads us to this online survey of national qualifications agencies, which we use to find out more about these agencies and how they work, and also how they are embedded at national level. The results, and I really try to focus only on very few results just to give you a first insight. They focus on responses from 28 agencies, which corresponds to a response rate of approximately 30%, which is probably quite good, but also we're still aiming for more, but that's also an aspect I'll come back to later. And the reason why these numbers are moderate overall, when I told you that we're basically covering countries from various continents, is that the survey was only addressed to those countries where we know from desk research that there is a comparable agency in place. For other countries where qualification structures are governed and structured differently, the research stopped basically before the survey. So what did we find out in the survey so far? So most of the agencies that have replied, they identify themselves with our working definition and would consider themselves as a national qualifications agency. You also see this here in this chart. That's basically the green share of the chart are those agencies that can identify themselves well with this working definition of a standalone body that has a key role in the qualification systems and a key role in coordinating stakeholders of the education and training system. But there's also a couple of countries, and that's the yellow bar in our chart that replied, for instance, that they only partly find themselves in our working definition, and that it only applies partly to them. I've just cited one example here. This can be for various reasons, but for instance, in the case of Scotland, the definition, for instance, applies partly to the SCQF, the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework Partnership. They basically comply with the first part of the definition. They do have a central role in developing the qualification systems, and they also have a central role in coordinating discussions in relation to the national qualifications frameworks, but not with regard to individual qualifications. So to them, the definition only applies partly, and that's where we see that, how national agencies and their responsibilities are structured differently across countries. Also, something that might be of interest to you are the main functions, the main roles of national qualifications agencies. So when we take a closer look at the key functions of these agencies, we can identify a core set of common core functions that we find in most of these agencies that have responded to the survey. And more specifically, there is a set of 4 key functions that we find in more than 80% of the agencies. And these revolve around maintaining a qualifications database, the maintenance or overseeing of the National Qualifications Framework, the coordination of stakeholder dialogue on education and training, on the qualification system, and also quality assurance of the education and training systems. Just to name a few examples, and it's not exhaustive, some agencies were or who share these 4 core functions as part of their profile and their mission, for instance, Estonia, Finland, Ireland, but also Kosovo, Sweden, and Turkey. You see there are some other functions that are also appear quite prominently, actually, that are not part of the 4 most prominent functions. But for instance, the provision of information and guidance, and the function of reforming the qualification system, they appear quite highly as well. So these are also assumed by large shares of the, or large numbers of the qualifications agencies surveyed. One additional aspect I wanted to draw your attention to is staff capacity and capacity needs of qualifications agencies, because it might be interesting for you to know how your peers are dealing in terms of these issues. So we asked the national agencies about their staff capacity and capacity building needs with regards to topics and functions and roles of their activities as a national qualifications agency. And as regards to whether the staff capacity of the agency is adequate, the picture among the countries is quite mixed. There's a share of agencies for which it seems to be perfectly adequate, and there's another share where it's obviously not adequate. So the picture is quite mixed across countries. But in any case, almost half of the agencies still would reply that their staff capacity is insufficient in at least some regard to fulfill their role as a qualifications agency. As regards capacity development needs, quite exactly half of the agencies state that they have staff capacity development needs that are not fully met, which we see points to a need for capacity development for actually quite a sizable share of the countries, and which might also be maybe a first starting point or some inspiration to take part in and get active in this Erasmus Plus call for capacity building in VET. There's one final aspect of the survey that I would like to draw your attention to, that is the level of interest in cooperation with peers and specific topics for cooperation with peers on topics related to the roles of qualifications agencies. We see that actually 3/4 of the respondents declared their interest in cooperation with peers, which is, I think, a really large share. So this means that 3 in 4 qualifications agencies actually would be interested in starting or having some form of exchange, peer exchange at international level with peers from other countries. I've listed here the countries. They're quite large in numbers. I won't pick any specific names, but I just wanted to mention some names to give you some idea on which countries might be interested. Yeah, without going into much detail, because there's one aspect of to this question that I would like to go in detail on, and this is actually the specific topic suggested for international cooperation between national qualifications agencies. This was also one question that we asked in the survey, and this one led actually to a quite sizable list of topics, of aspects suggested that qualifications agencies, that respondents would be interested in collaborating on. So these topics that you see here are basically those that have been suggested, proposed by the qualifications agencies. We tried to group them a little bit according to broader topics so that you get an overview, and had to summarize them a little bit because actually the list of topics mentioned was so long that we could not just list them on one slide. And again, just as a point of information, as pointed also out by Anthony before, this does by no means mean that if you select any of these topics, you will be successful in the Erasmus Plus call. This is really just meant to provide you with some inspiration of actually what are the topics that your peer qualifications agencies are interested on, are working on, or having challenges with. And you see here that quite some topics relate to the implementation of national qualifications frameworks and links to the European qualification framework. So there were some topics mentioned regarding the leveling of qualifications in national qualifications framework, but also, for instance, the inclusion of non-formal qualifications was mentioned, but also the links between the EQF and third countries. There were some topics mentioned about designing credentials, qualifications. So the topic of micro-credentials came up here as well, but also the development and implementation of standards, in particular qualifications and occupational standards. Another topic that was also quite prominently mentioned was the topic of recognition, both in terms of the recognition of foreign qualifications, but also the recognition of prior learning, for instance. Another aspect that came up quite prominently was the aspect of stakeholder engagements. So this referred to organizing communication with stakeholders on their role in developing the qualification systems, but also strategies for stakeholder involvement, for instance. And then there was an additional block that revolved around topics that are more or less loosely related to the aspect of quality assurance of the vocational education and training system. So here the topics mentioned included the accreditation of programs and qualifications, but also aspects of accreditations of institutions, so providers or awarding bodies, but also the topic of innovation and technology in assessment. So these are just this is a rough overview on the topics that qualifications agencies have mentioned so far they would be interested in collaborating in. And they also mentioned formats they would like to use for this collaboration or cooperation. And these included best practice exchange, but also peer learning, trainings, study visits, and working groups. So this was just a quick glimpse into our first survey results on a very small selected number of qualifications, because after all, the key purpose of our session today is not to give you super detailed survey results, but rather to promote and encourage and inspire you to engage in international cooperation on maybe some of these topics if relevant to you. And this is also the point actually where you as participants can now take an active role. And for this, I would like to hand you over to my colleague, Julia.
Yes, indeed. So we have prepared some interaction with you, let's say. So you can see here the QR code. You could also just directly go to Slido and fill in the number that you see here, 108203. And there you find, first of all, an open question where we would like to know which topics you would be interested in to cooperate with others. And we just want to collect your ideas there for a couple of minutes. So you see the number here in case you don't see it anymore and you were a bit late. So micro-credentials are coming up. Let's see what else. So we have recognition in general, recognition of micro-credentials. A lot on micro-credentials, so I think Anthony's presentation was very impactful. Recognition of prior learning, establishing international agencies, modernization of VET curricula, quality assurance, automatic recognition. Okay, so now I don't see anyone typing anymore. Let's see. Yeah, micro-credentials come up in almost every. Okay, there's still some more to come. Online databases are there. Yeah, lots of interesting topics. And I think we can say that there's really a lot that you're interested, that you have in common. So there's lots of potential for cooperation. Actually, we will come to this later, but we also have a Miro board for this to help you with matchmaking. And so I see 2 more participants are typing, but so maybe in 2 minutes, then we can go to the second question. Just see what we have new. Digitalization, simulators, distance learning, adaptability, visibility. Okay, I think no one is writing anymore, so we will keep this this information, and you can also use it later on in the Miro board. And I think we can go to another question that we have prepared for you, where you could choose which of these topics you would be interested in the most. So the first is developing and implementing national qualifications frameworks, quality assurance, stakeholder engagement, accreditation of programs or providers. Then we have had assessment as well, recognition of prior learning. Keep it running for a bit before we can see the trends. Now it's changing quite quickly. Micro-credentials are taking the lead again. But there's also interested in developing and implementing national qualifications frameworks. recognition of qualifications, and we have 14 respondents so far. Maybe some more are coming. So if not, if everyone has voted, then we can see again that micro-credentials are really the top priority by most of you. But also the recognition of qualifications, developing and implementing NQFs, quality assurance, recognition of prior learning, accreditation of programs or providers, and also a little bit assessment. One of the reasons why we created these questions was also to get you into thinking about what topics would interest you and what would interest you the most. And we would like to help you to find cooperating partners also if you are thinking about applying. And for this, we have also created a Miro board like before. You've probably seen it before. Yeah, it's the same Miro board. It's next to the other one. This one is just focusing on topics for national qualifications agencies. So if you're the first one, you can just start right away in one of the blue boxes and write your project idea or topic and your contact details. And if you see that there's a topic that you're also interested in that someone else has already written down, you can pick one of the yellow post-its like virtually in the top corner and drag and drop it to the project idea or topic that you're interested in and add it there so that you can later see potential cooperation partners and you can contact them directly. Like my colleagues all said previously, we will of course share this link with you so you can have, and the board will stay active and open even after the meeting so that you have no rush. You can also, you know, in quiet after the meeting, think about what topics you would be interested in and still put your ideas down. And this should help you to find interested partners to cooperate with. Yeah, I think that's it for the moment. Monica, do you want to take over?
Yeah, I'll just say one final word because as Julia said, the Miro board of course will stay open. Probably some of you will also need some additional time to think about this possibility and any ideas. But I wanted to, in the meantime, draw your attention once more to this international survey of national qualifications agencies that I presented early on. The survey is still open until the end of next week, and I briefly mentioned that our response rate is okay, but we would not mind if it were much higher. So if you are linked to any national qualification frameworks at your national level, or if you know who would be the person in charge in your countries, we would be very grateful if you could just forward the link to the survey to the person in your country, because yeah, any feedback, any contribution from national qualification agencies will just make our survey richer, and this will then help us to give a little bit more inspiration, more guidance to countries, to qualifications agencies that wish to collaborate and that wish to network amongst themselves. Yeah. And we would like to provide these surveys and deliver a lot of information. And yeah, so I warmly invite you to forward this to any relevant body or institution in your countries. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And with that, I hand you back to Arjen, I believe.
Before I will speak, I think we will go back to Martina, because she just would like to show once more how the mirror board was structured because we went very quickly through the micro-credentials also there to understand how this works. So this is just to facilitate you to get in contact with other partners that have the same idea. Also, we are going to record, we have recorded our session, so you can share also once you have the follow-up email, this email with other colleagues that were not able to attend today, so that they can also join these mirror boards, and we can get more activity around it. So I would like to go back now to Martina for a second. Martina.
The proposal, Arjen, would be if you would like to, if we could do it also after, in case that there's extra time, so that I don't also run over the time of other speakers, as you wish.
Please go ahead, just 5-10 minutes.
Very good.
And I will close after.
So I will just share my screen once again to explain a little bit, as maybe it might have been a little bit too fast, the explanation of when you click onto the link of the Miro board and you are entering the space, all you need to do is just zoom in order to see both boards where you can fill in any interests that you have in regards to activities. So if you are interested, as we were saying, on micro-credentials, either on developing or recognizing, you can check out some of the themes here. Again, scroll in to read a little bit the themes that reflect what was onto the presentations, and then you can input your details in these sticky notes here. So I can also explain a little bit more the themes that we have on standards for quality assurance, qualifications, frameworks, digital credential policies and strategies, platforms at the national or regional levels, incentivizing micro-credentials in the labor market, policies for unbundling existing education and training pathways, individual learning accounts for lifelong learning. And if I scroll over to the more institutional level activities, micro-credential strategies could be on your mind, credit sharing agreements to provide joint micro-credentials between institutions, co-creation of micro-credentials with the labor market, stacking micro-credentials into new types of qualifications, or even the use of micro-credentials for recognition of prior learning, be it in the formal, non-formal, or informal context, and capacity building of institutions.
Thank you very much, Martina. And of course, you can change the size of your post-its as long as you put all your details in there and put it to the theme which you would like to join. And if you have any other themes, you can also add them. So this is how it works. Please play a little bit with it. And if you have difficulties, you can get back to us. We will help you to use it. We hope that this is useful. And I really would like to now end up. We are actually in time, and I'm very happy with that, because it's good to have events finishing in time in these kind of situations. I really hope that you are going to submit projects, because as you can see, the chances in the first round was 50%. That's very high. And if you consider that there were also a lot of ineligible applications, it was even higher. So that is not to be ignored. I would say if you start now, if you make a quality application, if you follow the guidance, if you make sure that this is also has clearly a VET dimension, then really you have a chance that your proposals will be successful. Of course, it is important. I see that there are still some comments. I see that Mohammed Slassi has been writing here. He says, okay, there is here some confusion. He says it's about the term qualification and certification, qualification and certification. Normally we use in French certification. Also, there is, yes, Pauline, also to come back to your question, we do have some insight in the micro-credentials. We have done a survey on this, and we can share this information with you, or we have also done a policy brief. You can find this information. You can get back to us on these things. So what we really would like to do is to really stimulate you to make projects, and we hope to have projects so that there could be more activity, because in the end, a lot of the developments, both in networking these qualifications agencies, which are not, let's say, yet in a network. There is a network, of course, within the EQF, which is the NCP network, but it's really trying to make these agencies more, let's say, linked up and address common challenges. And this world of qualification is changing very much. Micro-credentials only have one aspect. This, of course, is an important aspect, and we also hope that these micro-credentials, that they can be tested, that also that we can really help to facilitate establishing frameworks that can make it possible to have micro-credentials that have value, because that's the aim. So we are going to publish, we're going to follow up with an email in which we address all the issues that have been mentioned in the chat, with the follow-up, with the links to the mirror board, with the links to the registration, so that you can share this further. And we really hope that you are going to take initiatives. We also hope that you are going to look at the publications that are coming in January. We are going to share the draft versions of the report on the qualifications agencies. It will only be available in first instance in English, but we are going to translate it as well in French and Russian. And also on the micro-credentials, we are going to share guidelines with you, draft guidelines, also at the end of January. And those guidelines, they will be finished off in February and March. But this will take time, and this is all before the deadline, after the deadline of this call. That's why we wanted to organize this event today, just 2 days after the general presentation of the capacity building, and we really hope that we can generate more and more projects. So I really want to thank everybody for being here, first of all. Also the Erasmus officers, which have been very active. Thank you very much. Also to the colleagues that have been presenting here, Monica and Julia, who have been working on the mapping of qualifications agencies from 3S, and Martina and Anthony from the Knowledge Information Center. So also my colleagues who've been helping us to organize this, Alina, of course, Christiana, and also Anatoly. We hope that this has been a useful event for you. Please come back to us if you have questions. We will help you to stimulate this. Also, we will use the chat. There are a lot of comments in the chat to prepare our notes. So please, thank you very much for being here. And I really wish you a successful project preparation. And please use this opportunity. Thank you very much, and have a nice weekend.